Welcome back to Broncos Central. I am Nathan McKenzie, and this is my tips for round 13 of the National Rugby League 2026. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. We're building an awesome community here, and I'd love to see you all there. Right, let's get into the first game of the round. Cronulla Sharks versus the Manly Sea Eagles. This game is to be played at Ocean Protect Stadium Friday night at 8 p.m. And here's a look at the team list for this game. Alright, let's get through some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Head-to-head since 1988, so they've played 40 games. Manly's leading that 24-16. At this particular ground, Cronulla have a 59% winning rate to Manly's 58%. So Manly don't hold any great nerves about playing here. They have actually the same playing percentage as Cronulla do themselves. Previous meetings, Cronulla's actually won the previous two meetings against Manly. The form guides, so Cronulla's coming off a bye last week. They won their last game at Magic Round, 38 points to 16 against the Bulldogs. Having won two of their last 5 games with losses to the Rabbitohs, Cowboys and the Roosters. Manly won their last game against the Titans, 12 points to 10. Having won 4 of their last 5 games, but their only loss coming to the Penrith Panthers, and even that game was 50-50 going into the last 20 minutes. Cronulla are scoring 29 points a game and conceding on average 26 points a game. At home though, the average scoring margin is 37 points to 20, so a very big difference when they play at home. Manly are averaging 28 points a game and conceding on average 18 points a game. When they play away from home, however, they're scoring 36 points a game and conceding 15 points a game. Theirs looked a little bit different because if you go back to the first 3 rounds, they played at home and they lost all of those 3. And since then, they've been on winning streaks. So that's the reason why their average is actually so good away from home. Sportsbet, as of yesterday, of getting these results, Cronulla are as favourites, are $1.87 to Manly's $1.98. Remember, gamble responsibly, and the chances are you're about to lose. In summary, Manly don't hold any fears of this ground, and I don't think they will this week either. Manly are the informed team of the two. Cronulla are up and down. Each week, they're pretty much win one, lose one mentality, whereas Manly seem to be up for their games every week. Last week, they were a bit inconsistent against the Titans, but they did what they need to do to win, and they were missing some key players. And when Cronulla came off their last bye, this is their second bye of the season, they lost fairly highly. They lost to the Cowboys up in Townsville, and it was a pretty high-scoring match, like 46 points to 34 or 36. Very high scoring. So Cronulla, if they do the same again, now though they're playing at home, for my tip for this game, I tip Manly to win. 1-12. The next game is Newcastle Knights v Parramatta Eels, and the game is to be played at McDonald Jones Stadium Saturday afternoon kickoff at 3 p.m. And here are the team lists for both sides. Let's go through stats courtesy of the NRL.com.au. So head-to-head since 1998, they've played 46 times and they've actually won 23 games apiece. At this ground, Newcastle average winning ratio is 53%, to Parramatta's 40%. The previous meetings between these two sides, Parramatta actually won the last 2 games they've played against Newcastle. Form guides, so Newcastle coming off a bye last week, won their last game 36 points to 12 against the Titans at Magic Round, having won 3 of their last 5 with losses to the Panthers and the Roosters. Parramatta also coming off a bye last week, lost their last game against the Storm 34 points to 8 at Magic Round, having won 2 of their last 5 games with losses to the Storm, Warriors and Sea Eagles. Newcastle are scoring 28 points a game and conceding on average 25 points a game. At home, however, they score only 24 points a game but concede 33 points a game. So pretty different side of things there when they're playing at home. Parramatta are scoring 21 points a game and conceding 34 points a game. However, when they play away from home, they're scoring more points with 23, but they're conceding on average 39 points a game. So Sportsbet have Newcastle as favourites at $1.22 to Parramatta's $4.30. Just remember, gamble responsibly and chances are you're about to lose. In summary, Newcastle are in form, winning their last 3 games, and as we've seen during the week, also because he missed State of Origin, Mitchell Moses is out, and Parramatta will be missing their star halfback. Plus, they've got an assortment of players out. Parramatta's poor defence record away from home. Yes, I know they've had a couple of good wins away from home. They beat Brisbane in Brisbane. They beat the Cowboys in Townsville. Look at everything that's going on at the moment. Ponga's actually free to play this week. That's another story in itself. And the way the Newcastle team is gelling together now nicely with those big name players back from injuries. I've tipped Newcastle to win. I've tipped them to win 13 plus. Next game is the West Tigers v Canterbury Bulldogs. This game is to be played at Combank Stadium. Kickoff is at 5:30 Saturday evening. Here are the team lists. For both sides. All right, let's go through some of the stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. So they've played 45 times since 1998. Canterbury leading 27 games to 18. At this ground, the Tigers have only have a 38% winning rate to Canterbury's 31. So both teams actually have a very poor winning ratio at this ground. Predominantly, they'll be playing against Parramatta normally, and recently Penrith. Even though this is sometimes both predominantly the Tigers' home ground in some aspects as well. In the previous two outings between these two sides, it's one apiece. Form guide. So West are coming off a bye last week. They lost their last game, 46 points to 18 against the Seagulls at Magic Round. They've only won one of their last 5 games with losses to the Seagulls, Storm, Sharks and Broncos. Canterbury won their last game against the Storm 30 points to 20, and let's face it, it was a depleted Storm side. They've only won one of the last 5 games with losses to the Sharks, Dolphins, Cowboys and Broncos. So West are averaging 24 points a game this season, and they're conceding 26. At home when they're playing at their home grounds, because they're playing at 3 different ones, being Campbelltown, Leichhardt and Combank. They're averaging 34 points a game and only averaging 18. Canterbury this year are averaging 18 points for, and they're averaging 26 points against. When they play away from home, however, they're actually scoring less points with 16, and they're conceding more with 32 points. A couple of those big losses were up at Suncorp, so that's probably just incorporated in there. Sportsbet have the Tigers as favourites, $1.56 to the Dogs, $2.44. Just remember, gamble responsibly, and the chances are you're about to lose. So in summary, Canterbury had a morale-boosting win last week, the first win in many weeks. It was a good win, coming from behind at half-time. They played really well in the second half. If they can bring that form across to this game, I think they're in with a chance. Unfortunately, the Tigers are the opposite. I think a bye come at the right time for them. They've got some players coming back this week. They're starting to leak a lot of points. The last 3 games are averaging 47 points a game against them. Before that, they were such a good side. Defensively, they were doing really well. They're playing for each other. So if they can get that aspect back, I think it's going to be a really tight game. And just remember, this game is not a Leichhardt. It's not a Campbelltown. This is a Combank. So I don't really see this as a home advantage for the Tigers. That's it for this game is Canterbury to win, 1-12. The next game, final game of Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. is the Melbourne Storm versus the Sydney Roosters, and this game is being played in Melbourne at Amy Park. And here are the team lists for both sides. Depending on how State of Origin goes, depending on how many players will back up for both teams. Go through some of the stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Since 1998, they've played 53 times, with Melbourne leading 33 points to 20. Melbourne have a very good percentage rate at their home ground, winning 75%, with Sydney Roosters only winning 33%. Previous meetings between these two sides is one apiece. We have a look a bit at the form guide. Melbourne lost their last game 30-20 against the Dogs, having only won 2 of their last 5 with losses to the Bulldogs, Dolphins and Rabbitohs. Sydney lost their last game against the Cowboys 18-12 at Magic Round, having won 4 of their last 5, with their only loss coming to the Cowboys. Melbourne are averaging 24 points a game this year and conceding 26 points a game. At home, however, they're averaging 26 points a game and conceding 21. The Roosters, however, are averaging 39 points a game this season and conceding only 23. Away from home, not too dissimilar, 36 points a game, they're averaging 4 and 24 against. Now, Sportsbet have the Roosters as favourites, $1.81, and the Storm are at $2.04. Just remember, gamble responsibly, and the chances are you're about to lose. So in summary, both teams are coming off a loss in their previous outings. The Roosters are coming off a bye, and the Storm are coming off a narrow loss to the Dogs, falling apart in the second half, missing some players, and they'll get some of those players back through to Origin if they're all fit and healthy to do so. Melbourne have an awesome record at home, like I said, 75%. Roosters not so much at this ground, but Roosters are in form. They are playing some really good football. I know they had a hiccup against the Cowboys 2 weeks ago, but they're coming off the bye, and if they go back to the way they were playing previously, I think it's going to be hard to beat. And Sydney have averaged 35 points a game in their last 5 games. So they're attacking is on point, and if the Storm can't stop that, it's going to be a walk in the park. So my tip is to win is the Roosters 1-12. It wouldn't surprise me if it's 13 plus, depending how their attack goes and how Melbourne's defence goes. But that is my tip. Roosters to win 1-12. The next game and the first game on Sunday is between the Brisbane Broncos and St George Illawarra Dragons here in Brisbane, Suncorp Stadium at 2 p.m. kickoff. And here are the team lists for both sides. I'll be interested to see whether all the Broncos players coming back from Origin will play. At this point, I haven't heard anything to say that they won't back up. Considering it was only Carrigan and Katoni Staggs, with the other two, Shibashaki and Mann, being on the bench. You didn't get any game time, so I would think that all those players would back up for this game. Go through some stats courtesy of NRL.com.au. Head-to-head since 1988, Brisbane, they played 47 times, with the Broncos leading 25-22. Brisbane have a 58% record at this ground, with the Dragons only 37%. However, very interesting that the Dragons have actually won the last two games they've played. Funnily enough, it's been on a Sunday, and both scores have been 30 points to 26. So I hope it is not a repeat, and the Dragons have not won a game this year, so we'll just see how we go from there. In the form guide, Brisbane have lost their last game, 12 points to 42 against the Warriors, a Magic round. They'll be coming off the bye. They only won 2 of their last 5 games, with losses to the Warriors, Seagulls and the Roosters. The Dragons lost their last game against the Warriors 20 points to 12, having lost their last 5 games to the Warriors, Panthers, Knights, Roosters and Rabbitohs. Brisbane are averaging only 20 points a game and they're conceding 25 points. At home, however, they're averaging 24 points a game, but still only conceding 25 points a game. Dragons, however, are averaging 12 points a game and conceding 33. Away from home, averaging 13 points a game and only conceding 24. So actually, considering that, they're actually playing better away from home, even though unfortunately they haven't won a game yet. Sportsbet have the Broncos at $1.11 favourites. The Dragons $6.70. Broncos supporter, even I'd be tempted to put $10 on the Dragons this week just because of that. Just remember though, gamble responsibly and chances are you're about to lose. So in summary, I mentioned this before, the Dragons have actually won their last 2 games against the Broncos here at Suncorp. And both times Broncos were favourites. Last year the Dragons, yes, they won a couple more games, but they weren't playing good football at all. And the same the year before, they were there and thereabouts. Remember, the Dragons are yet to win a game this season. The last 2 games have looked really good, actually, against the Panthers and against the Warriors. There's been some really good play there. And just remember, the Broncos are still expecting a lot of players to come back from injury. Haas is back this week with Pierre Kura. Still missing Jensen. We're still missing Ricky. So I think this game, Brisbane will actually come back to form, and I think they'll win by 13 plus. I apologise in the background if you hear the noise. It's just started to rain here, so that's probably what it was. Next game, the 4 p.m. kickoff, is at GIO Stadium between the Canberra Raiders and North Queensland Cowboys. Go through the team list for both sides. Alright, just the team stats courtesy NRL.com.au. Since 1998, they've played 47 times, with the Cowboys leading 26-21. At this ground, however, the Raiders have a 58% winning rate and the Cowboys a 41%. Previous meeting, Cowboys have actually won the last 2 games against the Raiders. Form guide between these sides, so the Raiders lost their last game 30-22 against the Dolphins, having won only 2 of their last 5 with losses to the Dolphins, Panthers and Tigers. The Cowboys' last game was against the Rabbitohs, which they won 30 points to 18. Having won 4 of the last 5 games, with their only loss coming to the hands of the Eels. The Raiders have an average scoring margin of 20 points to 28. So not too crash off for the Raiders this year. At home, they're only averaging 19 points at home and conceding 26. The Cowboys are averaging 26 points a game and conceding 24. Away from home, averaging 24 points a game and conceding 21. Sportsbet have the Raiders at $1.71 and they have the Cowboys at $2.14. Just remember, gamble responsibly and the chances are you're about to lose. So in summary, the Cowboys won 4 of their last 5 games, with their only loss coming to the Eels, which to be honest, they should have won that game. Their defense has stepped up tenfold in the last 2 weeks, especially that game against the Roosters, which was phenomenal. The game last week, yes, they won, but they didn't win convincingly. The Raiders have actually lost their last 2 home games, which is a bit disappointing. I actually thought but you got to remember, their last 2 home games were against the Panthers and against the Red Hot Dolphins. So I know the Dolphins are missing some players, which I actually tipped the Raiders last week to win. So it was a bit disappointing. Bandos come out in force on a Sunday afternoon in Canberra, so that'll be a big win for them. Expect a very different Canberra side this week. Ethan Strange is back, and same with his name deceives me. The second row coming back in, played State of Origin this week. I'm sure people are yelling at me right now. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. In this game, I've tipped the Cowboys to win under 12. And the last game of the round, this is a big one. This is the best game of the round. It is the 6:15 p.m. kickoff. It's Penrith Panthers versus New Zealand Warriors. And this game as well is at Combank Stadium. And let's go through the team list of both sides. Depending on how every player pulled up after Origin, I'll see how those team lists are named prior to the game and prior to kickoff. That's courtesy of NRL.com.au. Both teams have played 50 times since 1998, with the Panthers leading 32 points to 17. Now this isn't Penrith's home ground, but they have a winning percentage of 56%, and the Warriors only 30%. Penrith have actually won the last 2 games they played against the Warriors. A bit of a form guide. So the Penrith won their last game 28 points to 6 against the Dragons at Magic Round, since coming off the bye last week, but they've won their last 5 games. The Warriors, they won their last game against the Dragons, 30 points to 12, and they've also won their last 5 games. So that's what I was saying. This is the best game of the round, no doubt about it. Penrith this year are averaging 31 points a game and conceding only 13. At home, they're averaging 38 points a game and only averaging 15. So, wow, that's incredible. The Warriors themselves are averaging 31 points a game and conceding 17. Away from home, they're averaging 32 points a game and conceding 15. So this is going to be a tight one. Sportsbet has the Panthers as favourites, $1.64 to New Zealand's $2.26. Just remember, gamble responsibly, and the chances are you're definitely about to lose. Alright, in summary, like I said, this is the best game of the round. As they say, saving the best till last. I can see this game going either way. If the Warriors actually do what they did against the Storm about a month ago, if they put that defence against it and they were actually up in their face, if you watch the Bulldogs game against the Panthers, if they do that mentality against Penrith, I think there's definitely a chance of an upset. And they did what they needed to do against the Dragons last week, demoralised us in Magic Round a couple of weeks ago. This is definitely Penrith's biggest test of the season. I think the last 2 weeks, the last 2 games they've had, they've won, but they haven't done anything convincingly. But again, when you're in this range of form, you just need to do what you need to do to win and get across the line with no injuries to get through. I think Penrith to win this game 1-12, but I think this is going to be a tight one, and I think the Warriors can get up, but I still tip Penrith 1-12. So the Dolphins, Rabbitohs, and Titans have a bye this week, so 2 points for all of those teams. So in summary, I have tipped the Seagulls to win 1-12. I have tipped the Knights to win 13 plus over Parramatta. Tipped the Dogs to beat the Tigers 1-12. I have tipped the Roosters to beat the Storm 1-12. The Broncos to win 13 plus over St George Illawarra. Cowboys to win 1-12 over Canberra. And the Panthers to win 1-12 over New Zealand. Let me know your thoughts and tips for this week with your comments down below. I'd love to see your reactions. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. I'd love to see you all there. And it's love to get more subscribers out there and get more passionate about not just the Broncos but the NRL. And let me know in the comments below what you think and what I can do better and how I can improve. I'd love to know your feedback. So see you next week for my tips of round 14. But other than that, have a good weekend of football and bye for now.